Welcome to Conversations with Achievers. I'm your host, Robert White. I'm a mentor to owners, executives, and their teams, and CEO of Extraordinary People, LLC. I work with people that want to create extraordinary business performance with less stress, more joy, and more personal fulfillment. So sit back, relax, and prepare to learn from your peers as we explore what it takes in terms of attitudes, habits, and behaviors that achieve extraordinary results. Results for yourself, for your family, and your community. Hello, Robert here, and welcome to another edition of Conversations with Achievers. You know, many of you, I guess all of the listeners, have one or more attorneys as resource persons in your life. And we're blessed today to have Alan Crone with us. He's the CEO of the Crone firm and headquartered down in Memphis, Tennessee. So he's probably got a little of the South in his mouth. And I'm looking forward to finding out how he built his firm and what's happened along the way. Alan, welcome to Conversations with Achievers.
Well, thank you very much. I am honored and flattered to be on a so-called show. I don't know how much of an achiever I am, but I'll be glad to share what little success I've had with your listeners.
Well, I think many of my listeners, if there was really a big-time major project, you might go to one of those huge firms. But most people have relatively small law firms, in my experience. I think, knowing a little about you, you're kind of in between, right? Kind of like a regional firm.
That's right. We represent employees, executives, and entrepreneurs. And people ask me all the time, well, do you represent businesses? And I say, well, we represent people, some of whom own businesses. And so we really try to be your personal law firm, and we really focus on employment law, legal disputes that affect your ability to make money. And
well, I sure like that simple definition. I think that would resonate with our listeners, frankly. People that like to make money and have some fun doing it, I think, would define a lot of the people in my world and the world of the listeners to this show. So that's a great one. Well, how do you go from being you get out of school, you pass the bar, you start practice. What was your journey like?
Well, Robert, I'm a recovering politician. When I first got out of law school, I was a Republican activist, and if you'd got young 20-something Alan Crone at a party and asked him what he wanted to do, I would have told you I wanted to be in politics. And I did that for a while. I right out of law school, I went to a big, huge firm. Did that for a couple of years, and frankly, kind of set out on my own. It was a mutual decision because I was distracted, frankly, by politics, and I really enjoy the chess match of politics, but I also enjoy the public service nature of it. And I kind of knocked around for a few years, and then the governor, when I was about 30, the governor asked me to come to Nashville and help him with some employment law issues. By that time, I had kind of settled on that as my specialty, and I did that for about a year, and then I started having a family, and rather than become a defendant in a divorce action, I came back to Memphis and started my own practice with a good buddy of mine, and ups and downs, and I was chairman of the party here for 4 years, and then kind of had a break. And I'll be honest with you, I always say I kind of lost my 40s. My 40s, I spent really not understanding what I wanted to do, why I was doing it. I was kind of disenchanted with the law practice, and long story short, I ended up ending that law practice and starting another one with another friend of mine, and did that until 2015, when I jumped off the wagon and went back into politics, and served a year on the city council, filled out a term for someone, and then my good buddy Jim Strickland was elected mayor of Memphis in 2016 or 2015, and I spent the next 4 years from 2016 to 2020 running this firm, but also being his senior policy advisor and special counsel. And my office was right next to his, and I was involved in everything the city was doing. And it for a political junkie like me, it was the best 4 years professionally I've had. I just enjoyed doing it. But I realized at the end of that I needed to focus on my business. And, you know, they say you're a product of the choices you make. And
Absolutely.
And, you know, where I found myself in 2020 was my firm had some direction. We were an employment law firm, but we kind of did a lot of things. And we really have focused on just helping folks with their employment law situations. Like I say, that can be advising a business on how to comply with the employment laws. Somebody whose job or career is threatened by maybe a non-compete or wrongful termination or those sorts of things. And, you know, and so now we're really focused about, you know, my personal professional mission is to transform the American workplace. And we do that one person at a time, by putting people first, and we do it one case at a time. And it's a big job, but, you know, your relationship with your employer, whether you're self-employed or you get a W-2 from somebody, or in the new economy, you may have a bunch of different checks coming from a lot of different places. But those relationships, that they are life-sustaining, not just financially, but in America, what you do is who you are. And so we really take that seriously, and we want to hold people accountable. You know, some good old Republican values here. People say, how can you be a plaintiff lawyer if you're a Republican? And I say, look, HR compliance is not just the right thing to do because it's the law, but it's good business. And so, we're in it for that. If someone is going to discriminate against someone, we're going to hold them accountable. But if someone wants to do the right thing, then we're going to help them that way too. So, you know, my job is to end employment litigation. The nice thing about that is, you know, we live in a fallen world, and people don't always do what they're supposed to do, and that's why lawyers, you know, like death and taxes will always be around.
So you're a problem solver on both ends of the formula between and sometimes you're counseling an employer and sometimes an unhappy employee.
Yeah, and I would say most of the time we're representing an executive or an employee, but we also, a lot of our executive clients have become entrepreneurs, and so we end up representing their businesses as well. But yeah, we primarily work, I say we work the compliance side of the street, whether that's proactively with an entrepreneur or retroactively with an executive or an employee who's suffered some indignity or some problem in their career.
Well, I sure see the kind of migration from politics to the work you're doing and how you hold it. In both cases, it's about serving people. So I get the consistency there, I guess.
Yes.
Even though the daily activities might be a lot different.
Well, you know, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You know, in politics, I always said to the city attorney, look, when I walk into City Hall, I'm not a lawyer. I was there as a operations person for the mayor, and you know, it's the same. A lot of times, it's the same skill set as How do you get from place A to place B? How do you solve a particular problem? Usually involves communication issues in both worlds. Oftentimes when you get into a political dispute, you realize that there's a lot more common ground than you think. And sometimes in an employment dispute, you realize that a lot of the problems is that folks aren't constructively communicating with one another like they should. So I think a lot of the same skills.
Alan, it's a good time for me to ask you, in building your most recent firm, what has really worked for you? What has, in terms of developing your work or protecting it, or I assume you're in compliance. We can start there, but what has worked for you in building a regional law firm?
I tell you what I think you got to come to work with every day if you're in my position. And it doesn't come naturally to me because I'm a lawyer and a politician. And when I say this, you'll say that would be hard, is humility. I think if you're the CEO of an organization, you have got to be humble, and you've got to come to work every day putting the mission of the company ahead of your own mission, and put the employees and the customers or clients or whoever you're serving ahead of yourself. And every time I do that for a sustained period of time, my organization sees success. And when I start making it about me, that's when I run into trouble. So I think that's the first club that's got to come out of your bag on the first tee, is you got to be humble. And part of that is realizing I can't do it all. And that's hard for a lawyer, because we're kind of taught in law school that we're supposed to do it all. And you watch legal movies and legal television, and Perry Mason doesn't have anyone sitting next to him. He's got Paul Drake and Della Street, but that's about it. He's doing everything himself. And that's not the way to build a successful organization. You got to, as a CEO, you got to bring people in, and then once you get more than one person in your organization, then my job is to make that person look good. And if I'm making them look good, if I'm getting my clients where they need to be, then the business is going to succeed in spite of me.
I have a number of years ago, I spent 2015 or really 2014 to 2020 in China. And but before that, I was mentoring executives and running leadership training programs and bringing cultures together. And I put a website together, and then I would ask a few clients what they thought of it, and they kind of uniformly threw up. They just vomited all over my efforts, and they said, this is standard kind of salesy talk, and it's not who you are, it's not what you do. And that turned out I didn't like the feedback, of course, but I try to be humble. I work at it, and I realize that these are people that love me and support me and pay me a lot of money, and I should listen to them. And what came out of that was a simple outreach to some clients, and their success stories being the central part of how I communicate about me at that time. And one of them happened to be about a law firm that happened to be here in Colorado. Many of my clients are really all over the world, but this was one of my few clients in Colorado. And it was interesting to see the partner problems in the firm. Is that that they'd gotten to the point of not liking each other, not trusting each other, and having really horrible relationships that just showed up around performance issues. How about you? And is that something you have to manage closely, or that you're relatively successful with?
I get along fabulously well with my partners, because I'm it. I have all the equity. And but let me say this about that. I think that whether you're talking equity or not, particularly with lawyers, you have to be aligned on your mission. And so many law firms, particularly law firms that are headed by a group of people in their 50s and 60s. We grew up with this notion of it's my practice, and the firm is just there to support me. And a lot of law firms, particularly small and mid-sized firms, there are a bunch of guys and women that get together, maybe because they like each other, maybe they all kind of roughly practice the same thing, but they're not a cohesive unit. They're not really a firm. There are a number of practices sharing space, and they divide the money up in such way. So I'm a big preacher on mission. And I think if you have an organization that has a mission, our mission is to transform the American workplace. And everybody here knows that. And we make our hiring decisions on that. And, if you're a talented trial lawyer and, you practice, I don't know, automobile accidents, and you may be very talented at it, but this isn't the place for you because we don't do that. And we're not going to try to put that square peg in a round hole. And so you've got to hire towards it, and then you got to talk about it, and you've really got to make it a real thing. And if you get into a dispute, then you bring it back to that mission and say, okay, well, how does this choice you want us to make, how does that further our mission? And a lot of times that question ends the debate. Well, it really doesn't, or it really does. Here's how it impacts the mission, and this is the ROI, and that sort of thing. And I think money is a big issue. A lot of times those firms that we're talking about, they may not have a clear objective distribution method. It may be, okay, you got two senior partners and they kind of decide, from on high how everything works. I had a partner once for a brief period of time. He always talked about, he told this story, and I didn't realize what he was saying to me. I was young. I didn't really realize it.
Those are the best realizations.
But he kept telling the story about, when he was a young lawyer, he worked for a firm here in town that had a senior partner who was a benevolent dictator. And he would, they had a compensation committee of one person, him, and he would dole the money out based on the way he thought it was fair. But what I didn't realize this fellow was telling me is that was the model that he thought worked, and that's how he wanted to proceed. And that wasn't my understanding of it either. So I think you've got to have real clear and frank money talk with your partners. Whether you're a law firm, a medical clinic, or you're selling widgets, you got to have that money talk before there's money on the table. And because I always say 10% is a lot when you're paying it, and it's nothing when you're receiving it. And so people have to be able to do their own calculations. They have to understand and know, and there can't be any surprises when it comes to compensation. And I think again, a specific law firm is, the answer to this is going to be different. But I think it's lack of mission, lack of alignment on what they're doing, and then a lack of commitment and understanding about how the money is going to be split up. And a lot of law firm compensation plans wouldn't fly in any other industry or profession, because American capitalism, the person who does the work doesn't necessarily get most of the fee or most of the purchase price. Right. Whereas lawyers believe, well, if I do all the work, then I'm entitled to the lion's share of the fee. They really don't think about, okay, you've got the fee, and part of that is for the salesman, part of that is for overhead, part of that is for the person who does it, part of that is equity. Yeah. And those are concepts that the American law firm just really hasn't grappled with, because we've got such an incredible monopoly. And let me, I heard this the other day, and it's true. Law firms, well, the legal profession in general, let's take a personal injury case. In a typical personal injury case, I have the total recovery. A third goes to the law firm. Then you take the expenses out. You give the client what's left. Maybe of the law firm's fee, a third goes to whoever referred it, and the third goes to the rest maybe goes to the firm and then gets chopped up. And everybody's happy with that. That tells you that there's a lot of inefficiency in our profession.
That's a really good point. Manufacturing people would look at that and go, "Are you kidding me?"
But there's just so much money to be made, particularly on in employment. I mean, in contingency cases, personal injury cases. You're a good personal injury firm is settling dozens of cases a month for 6-7 figures, and so the margins are really good. And what's going to happen eventually is private equity is going to come in, and you're already starting to see that with the bigger firms being able to take advantage of an economy of scale
and cashing out,
shove some of the smaller firms out. If and when private equity can get into that game, and in Utah and Arizona, there are experiments going on in that regard. You'll see a tremendous change in the legal profession, similar to the ones you've seen in the medical profession.
Well, this has been a great conversation. And, my approach in working with companies in terms of the outcome that we're working toward is focus. Does everybody know what we're up to here all the time? And then alignment. And I use a different word than mission, but it's in there. In my case, it's purpose, vision, and values. And then commitment. I mean, we're very aligned, Alan. So, but thank you. That's great counsel for any business. Look, we've got to wrap this thing up. How can people get in touch with you? How can something happen between you and our listeners that would be mutually beneficial?
Well, we've got a great SEO operation. So if you Google Alan Crone, attorney, Memphis, you're going to get me. Our website is cronelawfirmplc.com, cronelawfirmplc.com. And then you can go onto Amazon and you can find my book, The Law at Work, which is written for normal people. If it were written for lawyers, it'd be like this thick, unnecessary words. But then we got 12 chapters in here that help you understand how employment law works, not just for companies, but works for people. And also give some strategies on how to respond in particular situations where you may not need to go get a lawyer.
Got it. Alan, thank you so much for participating, for the gift that you are in your profession, but also to our listeners. I'm very grateful.
Robert, you're a great American. Thank you for having me on.
All the best. Thanks so much for joining us for Conversations with Achievers. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for this weekly show, the details are at therobertwhite.com and click on podcasts. I'm looking for businessmen and women with a story to tell, stories that might benefit other owners and executives. If you got some value from this program, I'd really appreciate you sharing about it on social media and just mentioned www.therobertwhite.com. Of course, subscribing means you won't miss a show, and rating the podcast positively will leave Robert smiling. I'm building a movement here for leaders who want to succeed in business, succeed with their families, have fun, and contribute toward making the world a better place. It's special to me that you chose to listen. I look forward to connecting again next week. Remember, reach out to me anytime with any questions or concerns at therobertwhite.com. Bye for now.